Welcome to this explainer. Okay, let's just dive right into the source material today because it has a totally fascinating and honestly pretty controversial premise. The text we're analyzing argues that human attraction, it is completely divorced from luck. It's not about your looks, it's not even really about your personality. Instead, the author claims that attraction is rooted entirely in manipulating human biology. So, what if attraction isn't about luck at all? We're so used to thinking of romantic connection as this magical, mysterious, spontaneous spark. But the source asks us to completely shift our perspective here. It argues that what we call natural attraction is, well, it's really just a predictable pattern of behavior. And because it's a pattern tied directly to human biology, it can actually be hacked. There are specific psychological loopholes hidden deep within the brain. By stripping away all that traditional, standard nice guy advice, the material suggests we can tap right into these mechanisms that operate entirely on a subconscious level. To understand exactly how this works, we are going to impartially decode 4 specific actionable mechanisms outlined by the source. We'll be looking at the dopamine loop, the subconscious investment, the scarcity anchor, the emotional pendulum, and finally, we'll wrap up with mastering your mind. Let's move to our first concept, the dopamine loop, or intermittent reinforcement. A foundational biological dictate from the source is this: pleasure is only valuable when it's scarce. This perfectly explains why being way too available actually breeds total boredom. The source points out that a massive mistake most people make in their interactions is simply being far too accessible. You know the type, replying instantly, giving constant compliments, always being there. Well, according to this framework, that kind of predictability breeds absolute boredom. The human brain is literally wired so that it only assigns high value to a reward, like someone's attention, when it isn't constantly guaranteed. The text actually compares this biological quirk to a casino slot machine or even endless scrolling on social media. Think about it. If you won every single time you played a game, the thrill would instantly vanish, right? So here is how this hack is practically applied as a sort of mini narrative. Step 1, you're incredibly warm, engaging, and attentive during a conversation. You literally make the other person feel like they are the absolute center of your universe. But then, step 2 is the sudden twist. The next time they reach out, you pull back. You become polite, sure, but brief. You take hours to reply. Step 3 is the biological result of this action. Your sudden absence triggers a real dopamine crash in their brain. By creating this trigger of excess attention and then suddenly yanking it away, you force their brain to subconsciously chase that dopamine high all over again. You are essentially turning your attention into that highly addictive slot machine. Moving right along to the second secret, the subconscious investment. Now, the source flips traditional advice completely on its head through a really fascinating psychological mechanism known as cognitive dissonance. This is the mental discomfort of holding contradictory beliefs, which actually forces the human brain to justify an action by aligning it with a positive feeling. We're usually taught that to make someone like us, we need to go out of our way to do favors for them, right? Well, the source argues you must do the exact opposite. You have to make the other person invest in you. This relies on what's called the Ben Franklin effect. Basically, if someone does a favor for you, their brain just cannot handle the contradiction of helping someone they don't care about. So the brain automatically justifies the effort by assuming, well, I must like this person, otherwise why in the world would I be helping them? The crucial point here is applying this through very small, totally non-threatening micro-investments. You might ask them for advice on something they're an expert in, or simply ask them to hold your drink for just a second. Maybe ask for a specific song recommendation. The source explicitly warns against asking for money or any major favors. The key is total subtlety. Every single time they perform one of these tiny acts, they are investing a little bit of energy into you. And according to the psychological framework, the more energy someone invests in you, the more valuable you gradually become to their subconscious mind. It's a really brilliant loophole. Let's explore the third technique, the scarcity anchor. Humans value what they think they might lose. I want to emphasize this core philosophy from the source because it impartially explains why remaining endlessly available reduces your psychological value to basically zero. Think about it. Why do people line up around the block to fight over a pair of limited edition sneakers, but completely ignore perfectly good, high-quality items sitting right there on a clearance rack? It's the exact same psychological urgency, just applied to human interactions. To attract anyone, the text suggests you absolutely must master the art of leaving them wanting more. So the practical application of this anchor is simple. End the conversation first at its absolute peak. The cardinal rule here is to never, ever let an interaction drag on until it dies out naturally. Even when a conversation is going incredibly well and you desperately want to keep talking, the source advises gracefully bowing out with something casually polite like, "I've really loved talking to you, but I have to run." By departing right at an emotional high, you anchor that peak feeling directly to your departure. The other person is left wishing the interaction hadn't ended, wondering what you're up to, and eagerly waiting for your return. Moving on to the fourth trick, the emotional pendulum. The source actually labels this the most powerful and, honestly, the most dangerous technique in the entire framework. It relies on a very stark contrast. Playing it safe and nice leads straight to predictability, and as we've learned, predictability is the absolute death of attraction. It leads straight to boredom. Conversely, creating emotional tension leads to true psychological attraction. The source uses a great analogy here. Think about a movie. If a movie is 100% happy from start to finish, no conflict, it's terribly boring. A great movie takes the viewer through sadness, fear, anger, and then joy. In the exact same way, the human brain requires emotional friction and contrast to actually stay engaged. To put that push and pull dynamic into practice, you definitely don't want to be mean. Instead, you create slight, controlled tension through playful teasing. You gently push them away with a bit of humor. For example, instead of a standard, super predictable compliment like, "You look beautiful today," the source suggests adding a little twist, something like, "You look great today," even though you're a complete troublemaker. Presenting these actionable examples highlights how keeping the brain guessing ensures you stay on their mind. Because they can never quite figure you out, you become the only thing they think about. Finally, let's conclude with Section 5, Master Your Mind. Let's just zoom out for a second and look at the overarching scientific lens the source provides here. It argues that this kind of dark psychology isn't inherently about malice. It's not about hurting people. Really, it's about objectively understanding the deep flaws in human coding. When you understand how the brain actually works, human interaction stops being this random mystery and becomes a predictable science. So, I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought. Which of these 4 tricks have you unconsciously fallen victim to before? Think about it. It's a fascinating question that challenges all of us to reflect on how these deeply ingrained biological realities have already influenced our own lives.